Imagine getting a letter in the mail,
Right.
right? And it's asking you to basically sign a blank check that will dictate your monthly expenses for, the next 5 years.
You would absolutely panic.
Right. You would scrutinize every single word on that paper. You'd probably hire a lawyer.
Yeah, without a doubt.
But if that exact same envelope arrives bearing the logo of your property management company, you'll probably just, toss it on the kitchen counter and let out this massive, heavy groan.
It's the ultimate chore.
Exactly. So today, we're talking about your condominium's annual general meeting. And for most of us, the immediate image that springs to mind is just a stuffy room.
Yeah, a stuffy room and a really dry agenda.
A dry agenda, and neighbors arguing over totally trivial things like, the color of the hallway carpet.
Right, the landscaping, the pool hours.
Yeah, exactly. We treat it like this totally boring administrative chore that we just have to sit through to avoid getting a fine.
It is widely considered the ultimate mundane Friday night or Sunday morning killer. People view it as just this bureaucratic obligation they have to endure.
Right.
But what's fascinating here is the sheer asymmetry between how we perceive these meetings and what they actually represent legally and financially, too.
Yeah, because we tend to think that, a single miscounted vote or like an improperly filed form at the registration desk is just a harmless clerical error.
A typo, basically.
Just a typo.
Yeah.
But in reality, a single miscounted vote in that room can quite literally alter the financial trajectory of the entire building.
And by extension, your own bank account.
Exactly. For years to come.
Yep.
But on the flip side, a perfectly executed, meticulously counted meeting represents the absolute ultimate protection of a property owner's rights.
It really is the ultimate protection.
So our mission for this deep dive is to completely flip the script on that stack of mail sitting on your counter. We're unpacking the incredibly intricate, honestly, often misunderstood mechanics of voting.
The chain of custody of a ballot.
The chain of custody, exactly. And the strict legal realities of vote counting under condominium law.
We're basically going to look at why the systems governing the roof over your head are both incredibly powerful and, honestly, surprisingly vulnerable.
And that journey really has to start by dismantling the deeply ingrained illusion of what attending one of these meetings actually entails.
Right. Let's talk about that illusion because it's just so common.
It is. If you're a resident, you probably think attending just means showing up, signing your name on a clipboard in the lobby, maybe picking up a thick stack of financial documents.
Documents you're probably only going to skim anyway.
Oh, totally. You skim them, you eventually drop a tiny slip of paper into a cardboard box, and you just go home to watch television.
Yeah.
The whole physical experience just feels entirely passive.
It feels passive because, well, the property management companies, the people actually running the event, they often streamline the physical process just to keep things moving.
Because they want efficiency.
Exactly. They want efficiency. But that drive for efficiency often masks the immense legal weight of what's actually happening in that room.
Right.
A general meeting is not a community update. It's not a town hall where you simply air grievances about someone, playing their music too loud.
Which is what it usually devolves into.
Right, but legally, under the foundational legal frameworks governing co-owned properties, the general meeting is the exercise of the highest power of all co-owners.
Okay, let's unpack this because the highest power is a really heavy phrase to throw around for a gathering in a rec room with bad coffee.
It sounds dramatic, I know, but it's entirely accurate in a legal sense.
Really?
Yes. When that meeting is officially convened and quorum is reached, that room effectively becomes the ultimate governing authority for what is essentially a multi-million-dollar asset.
Okay, I hear you on this idea of it being a powerful room, but aren't we overstating this just a bit?
How do you mean?
Well, we're talking about our neighbors here. We share a swimming pool, we awkwardly nod at each other in the elevator, we complain about the landscaping together.
Sure.
Treating a Tuesday night condo meeting like a high-stakes government summit just feels like overkill. It feels more like, a neighborhood block party that just got a little out of hand.
You would think so, right. Until you look at the financials and the actual authority being wielded in that room.
Okay, what kind of authority are we talking about?
Well, the decisions made in that room dictate everything. You're electing the condominium committee, which is essentially the board of directors overseeing the entire property.
Right.
And you are choosing the juristic person manager.
Let's pause there and define that, because juristic person manager sounds like pure legalese. When we say that, we are essentially talking about the CEO of your building, right?
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. The juristic person manager is the legal entity, or sometimes a specific individual, hired to run the day-to-day operations.
One calling the shots.
Right. They're signing the checks, they're hiring the security guards, managing the maintenance staff. Choosing who holds that contract is a massive decision.
Oh, for sure.
But it goes beyond just hiring a CEO. In that room, you're also approving the annual budget. You're voting on whether to raise common fees.
Ugh, the common fee.
Yeah. You're authorizing major repairs to the building's infrastructure, deciding whether to dip into the emergency reserve funds.
Wow.
And you're even deciding whether to initiate formal litigation and lawsuits on behalf of the building.
Okay, when you lay out the actual agenda items like that, the block party analogy completely falls apart.
Completely.
Yeah, I look at this list of responsibilities: approving budgets, raising fees, authorizing repairs, appointing executives, and it looks identical to a mini government.
It really is.
The residents sitting in those plastic chairs are literally the legislature. And those common fees they're voting to increase, those are taxes.
Yes. Taking that mini government analogy further, think about where a government actually derives its power.
From the people. Right. The votes.
Exactly. Just like any legislative body, the legitimacy of the decisions made in that condo rec room doesn't come from simply having a crowded room with a lot of people debating loudly.
Right.
The legitimacy is derived entirely from the legal validity of the resolutions passed. Every single one of those decisions relates directly to the co-owner's money.
It's their wallets on the line.
It is taxation, public spending, and executive appointment happening at this hyper-local level.
Meaning, it doesn't matter if everyone in the room is smiling and cheering and clapping each other on the back when a decision is made.
Not at all.
If the underlying vote itself is fundamentally flawed, the whole thing is just a house of cards.
The rules of procedure are everything. If the process of casting and counting those votes violates established legal guidelines, well, those massive financial decisions are instantly vulnerable.
Vulnerable to what exactly?
They can be challenged by any dissenting owner, they can be overturned in court, or completely nullified.
Wait, nullified.
Yeah. Imagine if a vote on a major infrastructure repair, like fixing a leaky roof, is nullified 6 months later because of a procedural error during the meeting.
Oh, wow. That would be a nightmare.
The building's operations can literally grind to a halt. Vendors don't get paid, management companies might just walk away to avoid the liability, and the financial burden falls right back onto the owners.
So if this general meeting is essentially a high-stakes mini-government, then the ballot box sitting at the front of the room is its engine.
That's the perfect way to look at it.
The entire mechanism relies on how those tiny slips of paper are handled. So let's trace the anatomy of a single vote, starting with the very first physical action, which is dropping the ballot into the box.
The physical act of dropping the ballot is critical. When the time comes to elect the committee or decide on a major agenda item, the co-owner who is attending in person must fill out their voting card and physically place it into the designated box.
Right, which seems incredibly basic, almost mundane.
It does.
But legally, this is not just putting paper in a slot.
No, it's categorized as a direct expression of intent.
A direct expression of intent.
Yes, and that is a crucial legal threshold. Up until the moment that ballot leaves your hand, you are just observing. You're just a spectator.
Right.
But the moment it drops into the box, it becomes a physical manifestation of your legal right to govern your property. It is the exact moment potential power becomes actualized power.
Because it's the actualization of power, the mechanics surrounding that slip of paper have to be, like, airtight.
Absolutely airtight.
Every single ballot inside that box has to be highly traceable. I mean, it's not enough for the staff to just count 100 pieces of paper at the end of the night and call it a success.
No, not at all.
It must be definitively proven that a specific ballot was issued to a specific eligible voter on that specific day, and critically, it must only be used for that specific meeting.
Traceability is the bedrock. Without a provable chain of custody, the entire election is an illusion.
So let's play this out in the real world, because we have all been to these meetings and seen how chaotic they can get.
Oh, they can be absolute chaos.
You walk into the lobby, there's a folding table set up, the property management staff is completely overwhelmed.
People are chatting, complaining about the elevators.
Exactly. People are asking where the coffee is. So what happens if the system for handing out these voting cards is sloppy?
Well,
Like, what if a staff member, just trying to keep the line moving, grabs a handful of blank voting cards and just slides them across the table to me and my neighbor without strictly checking our IDs or cross-referencing our unit numbers against the master registry.
That happens more often than you'd think, and a lack of clarity in receiving, distributing, or collecting those ballots instantly breeds doubt.
Instant doubt.
If you are standing there and you see staff handing out blank voting cards like they're cocktail napkins, you immediately know the chain of custody is broken before the meeting has even officially started.
Right.
And doubt is a contagion in these legal settings. The moment there is doubt about how the ballots were distributed, it leads directly to questions about the legitimacy of the entire vote.
Because, I mean, if anyone can just grab a card off the table, or if a resident takes 3 cards instead of 1, how do we know the final results represent the actual verified legal owners?
We simply don't. We have no idea. And that opens a massive door.
Right.
All it takes is one disgruntled owner, perhaps someone who lost a vote on an issue they cared deeply about, to point out that the registration desk was compromised.
And they can use that.
Oh, absolutely. They can use that procedural failure to challenge the outcome, stall the building's operations, and drag the entire condominium into a messy, expensive legal dispute.
So if you're listening to this and you live in a condo, consider this your wake-up call.
Yes, please.
This is why you need to pay razor-sharp attention when you are standing at that chaotic registration desk. When they hand you your papers at the door, you aren't just getting an agenda and a complimentary bottle of water.
No, you're being handed a highly specific, closely monitored legal instrument.
Exactly. You have to treat it, and honestly, demand the staff treats it with the gravity it deserves.
But here's the thing. The physical ballot drop and the registration process, that just forms the foundation.
Right.
Securing the ballot box is really only the beginning of the gauntlet.
That is the truly terrifying part of this whole process. Getting the ballot perfectly documented and safely into the box is really only half the battle.
Barely half.
The real chaos, the place where things go spectacularly wrong and where lawsuits are basically born, happens after the box is opened.
Which brings us to a vital structural divide in how these meetings operate, the mechanics and the psychology of counting the votes.
Right. Picture the scene. The polls are closed, the room is restless, people are checking their watches, they want to go home, and the designated staff begin to pull the ballots out of the box to count them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, counting in this context is not merely tallying pieces of paper.
Right.
If the staff is just up there making generic tally marks on a whiteboard to see who gets the most strokes, they are fundamentally failing at the task.
Because it's more complicated than that.
So much more. Proper counting under condominium law is about matching intent with eligible voting rights. It's a rigorous process of legal verification, not basic arithmetic.
Before we even get into the verification, we need to talk about the math of condominium voting, because this is where I think a lot of people get confused.
It is confusing, yeah.
When we say counting votes, we aren't doing a simple head count. It is not a democracy where one person equals one vote.
And this is a fundamental concept that completely changes the power dynamics of the room. In a condominium framework, your voting power is not based on your physical presence as a human being.
It's not one resident, one vote.
Exactly. It is based on your title deed. Specifically, your voting weight is determined by your ownership ratio in the building, which is usually tied directly to the square footage of your unit.
Meaning, if I own like a tiny 30 square meter studio apartment on the second floor, and my neighbor owns a sprawling 200 square meter penthouse on the top floor, our voices are not equal when those ballots are counted.
Not even close. The penthouse owner might hold 10 times the voting points that you do.
10 times. Wow.
Yeah. So when they drop their single ballot into the box, it carries the weight of their entire ownership ratio. This is why a simple tally mark on a whiteboard is dangerously inaccurate.
Right. Because one tally mark could be a studio, and the next tally mark could be the penthouse.
Exactly. The staff isn't counting pieces of paper. They are calculating the aggregate sum of property ownership ratios cast in favor of a resolution.
That makes the verification process infinitely more complex. You can't just say 50 people voted yes and 40 people voted no.
Right.
You have to know exactly which 50 people voted yes and what their specific property ratios are.
Yes, down to the decimal point.
And to manage that complexity, the rules demand that all the votes absolutely must be kept in 2 entirely distinct, strictly separated groups during the counting process. You cannot mix them.
Never. Group 1 is the in-person votes. These are the people who verified their identity at the desk, sat in the room, listen to the debate, and exercise their rights directly in real time.
Their intent is clear and present. Like, they heard the arguments for and against replacing the roof, and they made a choice in that exact moment based on the information presented.
Exactly. Then you have group 2, the proxy votes.
Ah, proxy.
Yeah, these are the votes cast by someone else on behalf of an owner who couldn't attend the meeting. And this group introduces an immense web of vulnerabilities.
A proxy feels like a simple convenience, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't make it to the meeting because you have to work late, so you sign a form giving your neighbor the right to vote for you. It happens all the time.
It does.
But the legal guardrails around proxies are incredibly strict. A proxy is strictly legally bound only to the specific meeting written on the document.
It is not a blank check.
No, it is not an infinite hall pass for your neighbor to make decisions for you forever.
The precision required here is non-negotiable. If a proxy form is filled out and explicitly states it is valid for Ordinary General Meeting number 2 on August 9th, then it can only be used on August 9th at meeting number 2.
Right.
It seems obvious, but this rule is violated constantly in the name of convenience.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's explore why that violation happens. Because on the surface, rolling a proxy over seems incredibly practical.
It feels efficient.
Right. Imagine I gave my proxy to my neighbor for meeting 1 because the building was going to vote on a massive, expensive new security system.
Okay.
And I wanted my neighbor to vote against it for me. But on the night of meeting 1, not enough people show up. They don't hit quorum, so they have to cancel the meeting entirely.
Happens a lot.
They reschedule meeting 2 for 3 weeks later. The agenda is identical. It is still about the exact same security system. Why can't we just roll my proxy over to the new date?
Why make everyone do the paperwork again, right?
Exactly. If the agenda hasn't changed, why not just count it automatically to save time?
It is a totally logical question, and it is exactly why so many property management teams make this fatal mistake. They think they are being efficient.
But they're not.
No, because this scenario perfectly illustrates the psychology of the co-owner and the reality of shifting circumstances. Time is not static.
Right.
Between meeting 1 and meeting 2, even if it is just a 3-week delay, a co-owner's rights, intentions, and life circumstances can fundamentally change.
Walk me through that. 3 weeks isn't a long time. How drastically can intent change?
There are several distinct things that can happen in that short gap of time. First, the co-owner might simply change their mind on the core issue.
Right, they get new information.
Exactly. Maybe in those 3 weeks, there was a string of break-ins in the neighborhood. They did more research on that expensive security system, realized the building actually needs it, and decided they now want to vote in favor of it.
So if their original proxy, which they gave to their neighbor to vote against the system, automatically rolls over, their new intent is completely erased.
Exactly. Their voice is stolen, basically. Second, they might want to change who represents them.
Oh, condo drama.
So much condo drama. Condo dynamics are notoriously fragile. Maybe you gave your proxy to neighbor A, but in the intervening 3 weeks, you had a massive argument over a parking space.
Right.
You no longer trust neighbor A to represent your financial interests, and you now want neighbor B to hold your proxy.
That type of interpersonal drama happens constantly in residential buildings.
Third, the owner has the absolute right to revoke the proxy entirely. They might decide the issue is too contentious, and they'd prefer their voting weight simply not be cast at all.
Just stay out of it entirely.
Yes. And fourth, they might look at the calendar and realize that since the meeting was rescheduled to a Tuesday instead of a Thursday, they are actually free.
Oh, so they can just go themselves.
Exactly. They decide they're going to show up and vote in person.
So if the property management decides to take the stack of proxies from the canceled meeting and automatically carry them over to the new meeting to save everyone time, they are effectively overriding the owner's current will.
They are freezing the owner's intent in the past. Automatically carrying over proxies fundamentally distorts the true current intent of the co-owners.
Yeah, makes total sense.
The proxy is an authorization for a specific moment in time under specific circumstances. Change the time, change the meeting, and that authorization instantly evaporates.
Which means keeping these two piles, the in-person ballots and the proxy documents, completely separated and meticulously verified is not just a suggestion.
No, it's mandatory.
It is the only way to ensure the election is valid. Which leads us to the terrifying question of what happens when a building fails to do this. What happens when the separation breaks down?
This is the nightmare scenario for any auditor or legal professional looking at a condominium's records.
Paint the picture for us.
Okay, imagine the scene at the end of the night. It's 10 o'clock. The staff is exhausted, the residents are cranky, and just want to go to bed.
Everyone's tired.
Right. To speed things up, the staff takes the box of in-person ballots, takes the stack of proxy forms, dumps them all into one big pile on the table, and just starts tallying up the points.
But wait, if the total number of points at the end of the math matches the total number of points registered to be in the room, what is the big deal? I mean, the math worked out.
The math might look correct on the surface, but the act of mixing those piles completely and utterly obliterates the audit trail.
Let's break down exactly what data is lost the second those papers touch each other in a mixed pile. Because the transparency metrics that vanish are staggering.
They really are.
First, you no longer know how many points, like how much actual voting weight came from attendees who were physically sitting in the room versus proxies who weren't there.
Which is critical if someone questions the integrity of the vote.
Right.
If a highly controversial resolution passes, residents want to know if the debate in the room actually swayed opinions, or if the vote was simply steamrolled by one investor who walked in holding a massive stack of proxies from absentee landlords.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. If the pile is mixed, you can never answer that question. The data is gone.
Second, if you mix them, you lose the ability to easily spot duplicate votes. Like, what if an owner submitted a proxy form to the management office 3 weeks ago, completely forgot they did it, and then showed up in person tonight to vote?
It happens, and in a properly separated system, the registration desk catches that immediately.
Right.
But if things are chaotic and they slip through, a separated count will flag the discrepancy later. In a mixed pile, though, that double vote is completely invisible.
So they get counted twice.
Exactly. The owner's square footage just got counted twice, artificially inflating the outcome.
Third, and perhaps most importantly, you cannot verify if the proxy rights were used correctly.
No, you can't.
You cannot trace a specific proxy authorization document back to a specific ballot in the box once they're all scrambled together.
It is a total blackout of data, and this lack of traceability is the absolute breeding ground for disputes.
Because people get suspicious.
Instantly.
Yeah.
When co-owners cannot verify where the voting weight came from, suspicions arise immediately. Was that controversial fee increase really passed fairly? Or did the property manager slip in 20 expired proxies from a canceled meeting last year to push it over the edge?
And without the data.
When you cannot answer that question with hard data, it leads directly to court.
Let me use an analogy here to really drive home how insane a mixed pile is. Imagine you're auditing a busy retail store.
Okay.
At the end of the day, you ask the store manager for the day's receipts. Instead of handing you a ledger detailing cash transactions, credit card swipes, and gift card redemptions, the manager takes the entire cash register drawer, puts it on a scale, weighs it, and says, yep, the drawer weighs 4 pounds. That means we hit our sales goal for the day.
That is hilarious. But taking that cash register analogy further, imagine if the manager also threw in a handful of receipts from 3 years ago just to add some weight, and then looked at you with a straight face.
Exactly. The total weight might look approximately right on the surface, but you would have absolutely no idea if the underlying transactions were legitimate.
None.
You wouldn't know if a credit card was declined, if a check bounced, or if an employee was skimming $20 bills and replacing them with heavy rolls of pennies to trick the scale.
You'd have a final number, but zero integrity behind that number.
Exactly. A mixed pile of condo ballots is exactly the same as weighing a cash register.
You have a result on the whiteboard, but it is entirely meaningless because the underlying mechanics of how you arrived at that result are completely unverifiable.
And all this talk about systems and chain of custody and auditing, it all leads back to the most foundational unit of measurement in this whole ecosystem, a single vote.
Right.
Which brings us to the butterfly effect of how one tiny miscalculation can ruin your month or your year.
This is where we have to confront a very specific kind of apathy. It's a thought process almost every condo owner has had.
Oh, I know the one.
It's just one vote. My voice won't change anything. The building has 500 units. Why does my one ballot matter? I'll just stay upstairs and watch a movie.
I have absolutely thought that before. When you are sitting in a room with hundreds of people, your single voting card feels like a drop in the ocean. It is hard to feel like your specific square footage is going to tip the scales.
The reality of condominium governance strongly refutes that apathy, though. If you look at the history of these meetings, massive, landscape-altering resolutions pass or fail by razor-thin margins all the time.
Like how thin?
Sometimes a vote passes by a fraction of a percent. Sometimes a decision that changes the entire building's financial future comes down to literally one single point of voting weight.
So what does this all mean? Let's look at what that single vote actually swings. Let's walk through the tangible financial impacts of a single vote altering an outcome. Because this isn't just about winning an argument with a neighbor, it is about your wallet.
Right.
Scenario 1. Your monthly common fees. Imagine you are paying a reasonable rate and proposal comes up to hike the fees by 20% to cover rising inflation. The room is deeply divided. Half the building can afford it, half cannot.
Very common situation.
That single miscounted vote, or that one expired proxy that slipped into the mixed pile because the staff was lazy, could be the deciding factor that permanently increases your monthly cost of living.
In scenario 2, the building's emergency reserve funds. Every condominium has a reserve fund meant for catastrophic failures. A burst main water pipe, a structural collapse, an elevator motor burning out.
The big stuff.
Right. If a single invalid proxy tips a vote to drain that emergency fund for a cosmetic upgrade, like, say, putting imported marble in the lobby to make the building look fancier, the entire community is left financially vulnerable.
Because the money's gone.
Exactly. When a real crisis hits a year later and the pipes burst, there's no money left, and every owner is hit with a massive special assessment bill.
Scenario 3. The management. The committee and the juristic person manager hold the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, they absolutely do.
If one faulty vote tips the scale in favor of an incompetent manager, or maybe a corrupt board member who gives maintenance contracts to their friends, you are going to feel that in your daily life.
Every single day.
You will feel it in the cleanliness of the hallways, the security of the parking garage, and ultimately the overall depreciation of your home's value.
Then there's scenario 4, litigation. Voting to sue a contractor for shoddy workmanship or suing a neighboring property over a property line dispute is a massive undertaking.
Huge.
One unchecked proxy can plunge the condominium into years of legal fees and court battles, draining resources and stressing every resident, all based on a vote that wasn't actually mathematically valid.
And finally, scenario 5. Major renovations. We are talking about multi-million-dollar projects here. Replacing all the elevators, repainting the entire exterior of a 30-story building, or completely redesigning the swimming pool.
Big ticket items.
If you don't think a project is necessary, but the vote passes by a single point because of a chaotic registration desk, you are now legally on a hook to pay your share of a massive bill.
The connection you have to make as an owner is vital here. A single point miscounted, or an invalid proxy slipping through the cracks because the staff wanted to go home early, literally forces you to bear significant financial burdens for years to come.
Right.
Your property value, your peace of mind, your bank account, they are all tethered to the mathematical accuracy of that one evening in the rec room.
It is genuinely staggering when you look at it that way. It completely vaporizes the idea that a condo meeting is just a boring chore.
It's not a chore.
No, it's a financial battleground. Which means you need to know how to fight, or at least how to defend yourself. We need to arm you with a defensive playbook.
Protecting yourself requires active participation. You have to know what to look for, and critically, you have to act before the final results are officially announced and recorded in the minutes.
Because once they're recorded...
Once the chairman strikes the gavel and the meeting is adjourned, undoing the damage requires hiring a lawyer and going to court. You have to ask the hard questions while the meeting is still happening.
Okay, so... if you are sitting in that plastic chair, waiting for the meeting to start, this is the mental checklist you need to be running through. You have to act as your own auditor.
Exactly.
First, observe the registration desk. Do the handed out ballots actually match the real eligible voters? Watch the staff.
Watch them closely.
Are they strictly checking IDs and verifying ownership against the master registry, or are they just handing out voting cards to anyone who smiles and walks in? If they aren't verifying, the chain of custody is already broken.
Second, when it's time to vote, look at the physical ballots being used. Are they definitively marked for this specific meeting? Is today's date printed on them? Is the correct meeting number printed on them? Or are they using leftover generic cards from 3 years ago that anyone could have forged?
Third, and this is the big one we spent so much time discussing, watch the counting process. Are the in-person votes completely physically separated from the proxies on the counting table?
This is crucial.
If you see a staff member grab the stack of proxies and mix them into the box of in-person ballots, you have to speak up immediately.
Yes. And fourth, challenge the proxy stack itself. Before the votes are tallied, Ask the committee to verbally confirm that all the proxies being used match today's actual date and this specific meeting.
I'll make them say it.
Exactly. Ask them to confirm on the record that no carried over proxies from previous canceled meetings are being counted.
Fifth, when they finally put the numbers on the whiteboard, do the math yourself. Does the final tally of points cast perfectly align with the total eligible voting rights present in the room and represented by valid proxies?
It has to match perfectly.
If the registration desk says there are 10,000 voting points in the room, but the final vote tally adds up to 11,000 points, the count is fundamentally flawed.
And finally, ask about retroactive auditing. Are these results and all the underlying documents going to remain completely open and available for inspection?
Right. Can you check their work?
Exactly. If you ask to see the proxy forms the next morning, will the management company provide them? Or will they claim the documents are confidential or have already been thrown in the shredder?
That is a phenomenal, rigorous checklist. It covers every vulnerability.
Yeah.
But we have to address the reality of human behavior here, because knowing what to ask and actually having the courage to ask it are two entirely different things.
Oh, absolutely. This raises an important question about the social dynamics of a condominium meeting. They are incredibly powerful suppressors of transparency.
They really are. People are absolutely terrified to ask these questions out loud. Imagine the scene. You are sitting in a room packed with your neighbors.
Everyone's tired.
The property manager at the front looks exhausted and annoyed.
Yeah.
The committee president is rushing through the agenda because the air conditioning isn't working well.
Right.
If you stand up, raise your hand, and say, "Excuse me, point of order, can you prove the proxy stack matches today's date before we proceed?"
Yeah.
You feel the eyes of the entire room on you.
Ah, the glare.
You feel like you're being that person, the difficult neighbor. You don't want to be the one holding up the meeting and preventing everyone from going home to their families.
It is a very real, very intimidating social pressure. No one wants to be the antagonist in their own living space, but we have to radically reframe this anxiety.
Okay, how do we do that?
Asking these questions, demanding this level of rigorous verification is not causing problems. It is not being difficult, and it is not antagonistic.
What is it that, how do we justify interrupting the flow of the meeting?
It is the active, absolutely necessary protection of everyone's rights. It is the creation of essential transparency. When you stand up and ask those questions, you aren't fighting your neighbors. You are protecting your neighbors' investments just as much as your own. You are ensuring that the elderly couple down the hall isn't hit with an illegal fee increase.
Oh, that's a great point.
And you're making sure that the single parent on the third floor isn't forced to pay for a renovation they didn't actually vote for. Without those questions, the system operates in the dark, and darkness favors errors and exploitation.
You aren't the villain of the meeting. You are the auditor ensuring the mini government stays honest. And that brings us back to the fundamental truth of condominium living.
Yes.
Every single co-owner is a joint owner of a massive physical and financial asset.
The general meeting is not just a ceremony. It is not a social gathering with a bit of paperwork attached. It is a legally binding arena where your financial future is shaped.
Every single point cast in that room is the voice of a property owner. And that voice deserves to be counted accurately. It must be counted legally. And it has absolutely got to remain undeniably true to the owner's actual current intent. You simply cannot afford to compromise on the math when the math dictates your living conditions.
When you break down the mechanics, the vulnerabilities, and the massive financial stakes, it truly changes how you view that thick envelope when you check your mail, doesn't it?
It really does.
What starts as a mundane administrative process is revealed to be a highly delicate system designed entirely to protect your property rights.
It absolutely does. We have spent this entire deep dive looking at how incredibly precise, highly verifiable, and strictly separated the voting systems in our own living spaces need to be just to prevent chaos and protect our wallets.
Right.
And it makes you wonder if the mechanisms governing the roof over our heads are this delicate and this vulnerable to a single miscounted proxy or a sloppy staff member at a sign-in sheet. How rigorously are we auditing the proxies and the votes we cast in the other systems that manage our lives?
That is a very unsettling but highly necessary question to take away from all of this. We blindly trust systems of representation all the time.
Something to mull over the next time you blindly click agree on a massive corporate terms of service update, or let a digital algorithm make a choice on your behalf. I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Our mission is to take everyday, seemingly mundane information and turn it into powerful insights you can actually use. Hopefully, we have given you a brand new perspective on the immense power you hold in your own building. Until next time, keep asking the hard questions. Don't let anyone rush you through the fine print. And whatever you do, don't let anyone mix your ballot pile.